For a brief, extraordinary moment in history, the mightiest empire in the world was ruled from the African interior. For roughly 60 years, from the reign of Shabaka, who succeeded Paye, to the final expulsion by the Assyrians, the kings of Kush sat on the throne of Egypt. They built, they worshipped, they reformed, they fought, and they lost, not to weakness, but to a new and terrifying force that no one in the ancient world had yet learned how to stop. This is the story of the Black Pharaohs. When Pi died around 715 BCE, Shabaka did what Pi had declined to do. He came north and stayed. Shabaka completed the conquest of Lower Egypt, the regions Pi had left unsettled, with characteristic decisiveness. One Delta prince who had rebelled against Pi's authority was captured. His name was Bakin Ranef, and he had been one of those who had sworn loyalty to the Kushite king and broken his oath. Shabaka's response was unambiguous. He burned him alive, a message written in flame to anyone else contemplating treachery. With Egypt secured, Shabaka turned to governance, and here something remarkable happens in the historical record. Shabaka ordered the transcription of an ancient Egyptian theological text onto stone, a document recording an entire cosmological tradition that was crumbling away from an old worm-eaten papyrus. The text, now known as the Memphite Theology, is one of the most sophisticated religious documents to survive from the ancient world. Shabaka recognized that it was being lost, and he saved it. This was not the act of a conqueror. This was the act of a man who genuinely loved and respected Egyptian culture, who saw himself not as an invader, but as a guardian of something precious. The Nubian pharaohs are perhaps the only conquerors in Egyptian history who made Egypt better by conquering it. Under the 25th dynasty, pyramid construction, which had essentially ceased in Egypt for nearly 2,000 years, was revived, not in Egypt proper, where the great pyramid fields of Giza and Saqqara already stood, but in Nubia, where the Kushite kings began building their own pyramids over their royal tombs. These Nubian pyramids, smaller, steeper, more elegant in proportion than the Egyptian originals, would eventually dot the Sudanese desert for centuries, long after Egypt had forgotten how to build them. Art flourished, temples were restored, the religious traditions that had decayed during Egypt's fragmented intermediate period were renewed with fresh devotion and Kushite energy. But on the horizon, something monstrous was forming. The Assyrian Empire, centered in what is today northern Iraq, was the most powerful military machine the ancient world had yet produced. They were innovators of horror. The iron weapons that gave them an edge over bronze-armed opponents were only part of the story. Their psychological warfare was equally deadly. Assyrian kings boasted in official royal inscriptions about flaying their enemies alive, stacking their heads in piles, impaling prisoners on stakes outside conquered cities. This was not secret atrocity. It was deliberate policy. Terror deployed as strategy. Surrender and be spared. Resist and be made an example. For decades, the Kushite pharaohs of the 25th dynasty had been playing a careful game, supporting the small kingdoms of the Levant in modern-day Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, with troops and gold, trying to keep them alive as buffers against Assyrian expansion toward Egypt. It was an intelligent strategy, and for a time it worked. But the Assyrians were not deterred by intelligent strategies. They were deterred only by walls and armies, and even those only temporarily. The confrontation was coming. Everyone knew it. In 690 BCE, A new king ascended the double throne of Egypt and Kush. His name was Taharka, and he is arguably the greatest of the Black Pharaohs. He was a builder of staggering ambition. His construction projects stretched from deep in Nubia to the delta of Egypt. Temples, colonnades, shrines, sacred lakes. The great colonnade he added to the temple at Karnak, with its 10 soaring pillars rising 70 feet into the air, is still one of the most breathtaking architectural accomplishments of the ancient world. He was also deeply beloved. Later Egyptian texts remember him as a figure of power and justice. The Hebrew Bible mentions him by name in the Book of Kings, a Nubian king who sent his army to aid the Israelites against the Assyrian siege of Jerusalem. Whether that particular campaign succeeded or failed is still debated by historians, but the fact of his involvement, a Kushite pharaoh projecting military power into the Levant to defend small nations against Assyrian aggression, speaks to the extraordinary reach of his reign. For over 2 decades, Taharka navigated this increasingly dangerous world with skill and resilience. He lost battles and won them. He lost Egypt to the Assyrians in 674 BCE, retook it, lost it again, retook it again. He was relentless. But the Assyrians, first under Esarhaddon, then under Ashurbanipal, his son, were more relentless still. In 667 or 666 BCE, Ashurbanipal launched his decisive campaign. He took Memphis, he marched on Thebes, he sacked the city, one of the oldest and most sacred cities in the ancient world, a city that had stood for 2,000 years, and stripped it of everything. Taharka retreated south to Napata. There was nothing left for him to do. He was still king of Kush, but Egypt was gone. He died in 664 BCE, not long after. Heartbroken, the sources suggest, a broken man, despite everything he had built and fought for. He had reigned for 26 years. He had governed an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean coast to deep in the African interior. He had built more monuments than most pharaohs of any dynasty. He had fought one of the most powerful empires in history to a standstill, repeatedly, until the sheer weight of Assyrian iron finally overwhelmed him. His face survives. In the Cairo Museum and the British Museum and collections across the world, those portrait sculptures, with their high cheekbones and intense, unapologetic gaze, look out at us across 27 centuries. They are extraordinary works of art. They are also the face of a man who nearly held the ancient world in his hands. He deserves to be remembered.
Taharka's successor, Tantamani, made one final doomed attempt to retake Egypt. He swept north, briefly recaptured Memphis, and then was driven back by Ashurbanipal's forces in a campaign so decisive and so brutal that it effectively ended the Kushite presence in Egypt forever. The 25th dynasty was over. Assyria, triumphant, withdrew its forces after stripping Egypt of enormous wealth. In the vacuum they left, a new Egyptian dynasty, the 26th, the Saite dynasty, reassembled the pieces of the broken kingdom and ruled in Egypt's name. They would never again look south for their kings. In Napata, the Kushite kings buried their dead in new pyramids, steeper and more refined than Egyptian models, and prepared to build something different, something distinctly their own. For in losing Egypt, Kush had been freed to be Nubian, freed to develop its own script, the Meroitic writing system which would replace Egyptian hieroglyphs, freed to worship Nubian gods alongside the beloved Amun, freed to become, in the coming centuries, a kingdom that would trade with Rome, resist its legions, and endure long after Egypt had become a Roman province. They had been defeated. They had not been destroyed.
there is a difference, and the Nubians understood it better than almost anyone in the ancient world.